The morning sun had barely climbed above the rooftops when a little girl in a yellow dress stood silently beside two suitcases, staring at the only home she had ever known. The woman who had promised to love her after marrying her father looked away without a trace of regret. Across the street, a homeless single dad sat on a worn-out park bench, holding his young son close while wondering where their next meal would come from. In just a few minutes, the lives of those two broken souls would collide in a way that no one could have imagined. The woman believed she was throwing away an unwanted burden. She had no idea she was placing the greatest blessing of her life into the hands of a man who knew the true meaning of love. Before we continue this unforgettable story, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Kindness Vault for more emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. The little girl's name was Maris. She had lost her mother when she was only 5 years old, and ever since then she had carried a quiet sadness that made her seem much older than her years. Her father, Rowan, loved her deeply but worked endless hours to keep their comfortable life together. When he married a charming woman named Celeste, everyone believed Maris had finally found the caring mother figure she desperately needed. Instead, the smiling face that welcomed guests into their elegant home slowly revealed a heart filled with jealousy. Maris reminded Celeste too much of Rowan's first wife. Every family photograph, every school achievement, every gentle smile from the child became another painful reminder that she would never replace the woman who came before her. Everything changed on a bright spring morning when Rowan was killed in a sudden highway accident while driving to an important business meeting. The news shattered the neighborhood. Friends filled the house with flowers and sympathy, but after the funeral ended and the visitors disappeared, so did every trace of warmth inside that home. Without Rowan's protection, Maris became completely dependent on a woman who never truly wanted her. The expensive house, luxury cars, and savings all legally belonged to Celeste because of complicated estate documents that Rowan had never updated. Maris inherited almost nothing except a small trust that she could not access until adulthood. Celeste viewed the grieving child as an obstacle standing between her and a carefree future. She had no desire to raise someone else's daughter, especially now that the responsibility no longer came with Rowan's affection. For weeks she searched for ways to remove Maris from her life while avoiding criticism from neighbors. She finally convinced distant relatives that she had found someone willing to care for the little girl. In reality, she had no such plan. She simply drove across town to an old city park where homeless people often gathered, believing no one would question whatever happened there. Sitting beneath a large oak tree was a weary man named Aldrin. His clothes were worn clean but faded with time. Beside him sat his 6-year-old son, Kian, carefully sharing half a sandwich with a family of pigeons. Aldrin had once been a respected construction supervisor. A devastating workplace injury followed by overwhelming medical debt had cost him his job, his apartment, and eventually nearly everything he owned. His wife had passed away from illness years before, leaving him to raise Kian alone. Despite losing almost everything, he had never lost his dignity or his compassion. Every day he searched tirelessly for work, and every evening he made sure his son believed tomorrow would somehow be better. Celeste looked at the homeless father and immediately saw someone desperate enough to accept anything. She approached with practiced confidence, placed Maris's 2 suitcases beside the bench, handed over a small envelope containing only a few dollars, and disappeared before anyone nearby fully understood what had happened. Maris stood frozen, unable to understand why the last adult she knew had abandoned her without even looking back. Aldrin was equally stunned. He had no home, barely enough food for himself and Kian, and now an abandoned child stood before him with frightened eyes filled with unanswered questions. Most people would have called the authorities immediately and walked away. Aldrin could not ignore the fear written across Maris's face. He gently offered her the remaining half of his sandwich before taking a seat beside her. Although his own future was uncertain, he instinctively knew that no child should feel alone during the darkest day of her life. Kian quietly removed his own worn blanket from his backpack and wrapped it around Maris's shoulders even though the morning was warm. It was the only blanket they owned, yet he shared it without hesitation. The following days became an exhausting journey through government offices, child welfare interviews, shelters, and endless paperwork. Investigators soon discovered that Celeste had intentionally abandoned her stepdaughter, leading to criminal charges. Since Maris repeatedly insisted that she felt safest with Aldrin and Kian, social workers reluctantly allowed temporary guardianship while searching for permanent solutions. They expected the arrangement to last only a few weeks. Life inside the homeless shelter tested every ounce of their strength. 3 people shared a tiny room with metal beds, thin mattresses, and little privacy. Breakfast consisted of oatmeal nearly every morning. Dinner depended entirely on donations. Yet something remarkable happened inside those plain walls. Maris began smiling again. She helped Kian with reading, folded blankets every morning, and laughed for the first time in months when Aldrin pretended to lose a race against 2 energetic children across the shelter courtyard. She realized that while the mansion had offered expensive furniture and sparkling chandeliers, it had never offered genuine love. Aldrin never allowed hardship to become an excuse for giving up. Every sunrise he walked miles across the city applying for jobs. Many employers rejected him because of his injury or because he lacked a permanent address. Still, he returned every evening with hope in his voice so the children would never lose theirs. One afternoon an elderly cafe owner noticed Aldrin repairing a broken chair outside the restaurant without being asked. Impressed by his honesty and craftsmanship, she offered him a maintenance position. The pay was modest, but it was the first steady income he had received in years. That single opportunity became the turning point. Within months Aldrin rented a tiny apartment with peeling paint and squeaky floors, but to the children it felt like a palace. They celebrated by eating homemade pancakes on the living room floor because they could not yet afford a dining table. Maris carefully placed 3 mismatched candles on top of the pancakes and called it the happiest dinner of her life. For the first time since losing her father, she felt that she truly belonged somewhere. As years passed, Aldrin worked tirelessly during the day while studying construction management at night through community college programs. His determination inspired everyone around him. Promotions followed one after another until he eventually supervised large building projects again. The little apartment gradually became a comfortable family home filled with photographs, birthday decorations, school awards, and laughter echoing through every room. Maris grew into an intelligent, compassionate young woman who volunteered at homeless shelters every weekend because she never forgot where her second chance had begun. Kian excelled in engineering, inspired by watching his father rebuild not only buildings but also broken lives. Together the siblings remained inseparable, bound not by blood but by countless acts of sacrifice and unconditional love. Meanwhile, Celeste's life followed a very different path. The legal consequences of abandoning a child destroyed her reputation. Friends disappeared, financial problems multiplied, and years of selfish decisions eventually left her isolated and bitter. The wealth she had fought so desperately to protect slowly vanished through lawsuits, poor investments, and endless regret. She often wondered what had become of the little girl she had discarded so carelessly. Nearly 15 years after that unforgettable morning, destiny arranged one final meeting. A community center dedicated to homeless families held its grand opening in the same park where Maris had once been abandoned. Hundreds gathered to celebrate the project, funded largely through donations from a successful construction company owned by Aldrin and managed alongside Kian. The keynote speaker was Maris herself, now a respected child advocate whose inspiring work had changed countless young lives. Standing beneath the same oak tree, Maris spoke about how love is never measured by money, houses, or family names. She explained that the richest person she had ever known once slept on a park bench because true wealth lives inside the heart. Many in the audience wiped away tears as Aldrin stood quietly near the back, still uncomfortable with public attention despite everything he had accomplished. Among the crowd stood Celeste. Time had replaced pride with exhaustion. As she watched the confident young woman she had abandoned embrace the homeless father she had underestimated, the painful truth finally settled into her heart. She had believed she was giving away an inconvenience. Instead, she had handed an extraordinary child to the one man capable of loving her without conditions. The greatest loss had never belonged to Maris. It had always belonged to her. Before we reach the final moments of this story, if this journey has touched your heart, please support Kindness Vault by liking this video, sharing it with your friends and family, subscribing for more inspiring stories, and leaving a heartfelt comment below. Your support helps these stories reach people who may desperately need hope today. Special request: comment, love creates family, if you believe that kindness is stronger than blood and that one compassionate decision can change a life forever. As the afternoon sunlight filled the park, Maris gently held Aldrin's weathered hand while children laughed around the new playground built for families who had nowhere else to go. She realized that losing one home had led her to another far greater than she could have imagined. The man who once owned nothing had given her everything that truly mattered: safety, dignity, hope, and unconditional love. The woman who tried to throw her future away had unknowingly placed her into the arms of the father she was always meant to have. Sometimes life's greatest miracles arrive disguised as heartbreaking endings, proving that when compassion leads the way, even the darkest chapters can become the beginning of the most beautiful story ever written.